Over to you.
Well, it's kind of funny because when I started Riverside, I was asked about Riverstone. And every time I sat down for Riverside meetings, when I started Riverside in 2007, they asked, what's happening in Burkina Faso? So I really had to study, and now, of course, Orezone has made it a real success. So joining the Africa session couldn't be more appropriate. And with that, we've actually made a big move as Riverside Resources, where we've worked for a long time in Mexico as a mineral generator, made a big expansion over the last 5 years, and particularly now in the last 2 years into Canada. Working in Canada, giving us a stable jurisdiction, and for us, working in Canada where we were close to large databases and where we knew where to work, we're able to expand from Riverside's former work and continued work in Mexico. A forward-looking statement, I'm a very enthusiastic CEO, and I've worked in a long time in Mexico and a long time in Canada, and Riverside, throughout working for 16 years, has only put out 75 million shares. We have no warrants, and we have a cash of $7 million right now, so we have a very nice cash treasury. From a shareholder base, ourselves as management having 10%, having North American institutions, and overall having a half retail in the United States and North America, and then the other half in Europe. So it's really great to be in a session about Africa, because in this session here, we actually have a lot of European investors, we have a breadth of an international investor base, and overall 72% of those outstanding shares are within shareholders that are holding major positions. From a management perspective, myself being the founder of the company and having worked here for 16 years, and a very strong team with a vice president and Julian Manco, the chief geoscientist, here in the room with us today, and then a board of directors who've been very dedicated and really great to work together. Overall, we've had a chance to make discoveries in the past, and right now we're very excited about several of the discoveries that we're making inside of Canada. Our track record over the last 16 years is we've been able to raise over $24 million, and yet we've had $82 million spent on that portfolio. That's almost 4x, and that's the way to really expand exploration and not dilute the share structure. It's also allowed us to be able to develop the company to have large incomes. For example, we sold our lead asset in Mexico, the Tajitos project, to Fresnillo, and out of that we got $3.5 million that added to our balance sheet, and that was great. Doing those type of transactions ongoingly has been a great way, and it's been wonderful to be at this Precious Metals Summit. Having the people here in such a great event, we really love being here. And out of this, we've generated a portfolio of royalties. So Riverside has royalties. Riverside has generated those royalties, not by buying them, but using knowledge as gold and using our ideas, using our database. From those royalties, we've also spun out new companies. And so it's great to be here today because Riverside in the past spun out Capitan Silver. Capitan Silver is doing very well, and we dividended that to shareholders. That was excellent for the company, and it was excellent for us as shareholders, myself being a large shareholder, having never sold a share of Riverside. At least I got a win that way, and that was great. That Capitan went public and then went up 240%. So that was a really nice gain for our shareholders and an example of the type of venture we like to do. This is just a little model. If we look at the enterprise value and the cash with no debt, we'd end up with a market cap. So if we dissect that a little bit, one of the things we have is an Ontario portfolio. Another thing we have is actually a portfolio of royalties. A third thing we have is a portfolio in Mexico. And lastly, we have the BC projects, where we had the news release on Monday and where we're expanding as Riverside. So Riverside's been able to develop this portfolio, and overall, this is kind of an estimated situation. So we have, within this portfolio, we have royalties. The royalties are excellent. Royalty with Fresnillo, with Tajitos, they're developing this new large open pit mine. That large open pit mine in the state of Sonora, where Sonora is the largest gold producer in the country of Mexico. A stable jurisdiction where heap leach mining has been a leader, and where Newmont and Fresnillo have mined over 6 million ounces of gold, and where overall they have another 10 million ounces left in that Fresnillo resource, and that's in one of the Herradura. Over at Tajitos, again, having a large resource, a great place. Riverside having a 2% royalty, really nice. Generatively, we've generated a portfolio ongoingly. We have these different portfolios. And when we bundle those up as a business model, and then can either dividend to shareholders, or we can put them into new companies and keep that equity back, allows for many more projects to be explored. Over the life of Riverside, we've developed over 78 projects to have exploration, where Riverside's had upside potential to that, but it's not gone on our balance sheet for the downside of all that spending. From those different projects, we've helped to spin out 7 new ventures out of Riverside. And today we're working on the next. And that's why it's so great to be here. We're working in Ontario. We've built this portfolio in Ontario over the last 5 years. We staked ground, we worked it up, no underlying royalties. We've been able to do that work. We've gone through many different projects to build up 3 key assets in Ontario. Those 3 key assets in Ontario will potentially give us royalties of the future. Right now we have royalties from the past. The royalties from Sugarloaf Peak, which became Arizona Metals. The royalties from Tajitos, which are now in Fresnillo. The royalties from Capitan, which went over to Capitan Silver. And of course, High Lake Greenstones, which is as well as another portfolio that we have. So developing these catalysts of portfolios and moving them ahead simultaneously gives shareholders a chance for big success. It provides multiple different streams of success. And in Ontario, the thing we really like is shallow gold near big mines. Right now in Ontario, in the Thunder Bay region, the Geraldton Gold Belt, Equinox Gold with Orion are building what will become Canada's 3rd largest open pit gold producer. And Riverside, adjacent on the east side with our Oaks project, or on the west side with our Pichette project, we're doing brownfields exploration around that, where we're drilling it just down to 100 meters, just near the surface, and beginning to prove up different zones of mineralization. We have strike lengths of multiple kilometers. We have this 100% as Riverside. This portfolio in the Western Abitibi Belt is progressing as Riverside. So that alone really substantiates the value in Riverside and is very exciting. Inside of Riverside, we also have nice copper assets. Over the last 4 years, we've worked with BHP and we've built up a whole copper portfolio. That copper portfolio was wholly owned with Riverside and the work that we're going ahead, and we're very excited to have nice, large copper projects in Mexico that we own and have the title to. We've also expanded in British Columbia looking at gold, following up from the Republic District, where Kinross Gold and where Echo Bay before that had developed the Buckhorn mine, where they had had such great success at the Nob Hill mine, where they'd produced over 4 million ounces of gold, and we're on trend with that going up into British Columbia. And so following that up is one of our programs as Riverside's expanded more work into Canada. And lastly, developing new strategic alliances. Riverside has done 7 strategic alliances over the last 16 years. Those strategic alliances where we work with major companies in British Columbia, for example, we worked with Antofagasta, built up a whole portfolio of copper projects, and Antofagasta continues doing the exploration in British Columbia, and it's great to have worked with them and got them started. These different alliances are a great way for Riverside to progress exploration, boots on the ground approach, be able to move more nimbly and doing the exploration maybe for the big major companies that could maybe a little more rapid or could get into things that would be growing for them. And so Riverside's working on more of those, and we're delighted to have been able to do major ones with BHP, with Hochschild Mining, with Cleveland Cliffs, with Kinross, with many groups like that. So as we detail into one area, into Ontario, 3 key assets that Riverside has, right along the Trans-Canada Highway. The wonderful thing about Canada is the infrastructure is really mining district to mining district to mining district as you drive across the country. And so what we do is along the highway that connects from Timmins to Thunder Bay, Riverside has these different projects that we own. And so this portfolio. Here, outlining the Oaks project, where it has geology, mineralization, similar to the Hard Rock mine. The Pichette, which is high grades, similar to what was mined at the Leach mine and the Sand River mine. The Leach mine, Sand River mine produced at ounce per ton. They produced over 1 million ounces in less than 1 million tons of rock. That's high-grade production. That's the type of wonderful targets that Riverside's proceeding and progressing at the Pichette project. The Duck Gold project is also very interesting. It's west of Timmins. Riverside has it. It's a nice project. And it also has an old phosphate mine next to it, a carbonatite. There's also rare critical elements to it. Very interesting district play that Riverside has staked and has worked along. So from those 3 different projects, it really rounds out to a whole portfolio for Riverside. So as we look forward now, for the next 6 months, what could Riverside look forward to? One is British Columbia. It's great to come back where Riverside's based in Vancouver. We have a presence in British Columbia, moving ahead with the work that we're doing, particularly in southern British Columbia, and looking at rare earth elements and looking at different zones like that, as well as on gold, is something that for the next 6 months we definitely see as a diversification from Riverside's long history in Mexico. We still own Mexico. We're still solid in Mexico. We own the projects. But right now, the current political system is such that it's difficult to get OPM, other people's money. So we're therefore keeping our money. We have $7 million cash, so it's no reason to spend it all in Mexico, but we're actively acquiring little key assets in Mexico that'll stabilize and make that even stronger in the future for Riverside. But in British Columbia, we can move ahead in places where we're able to use the existing infrastructure, good road network, and particularly areas that have been logged and places that have had fire are exposing vast new areas of geological exploration. That's really great to get out there and do. We're also progressing, as we talked about, the Ontario portfolio, and that's going well. It's been a main focus for Riverside, and if you said, what's the key thing? Currently, it's been that Ontario portfolio, and we very much like the results that we've been able to do on orogenic gold. The royalties. Riverside's been able to generate royalties out of many different aspects of the portfolio, and we have that royalty portfolio, and so those continue to progress with Fresnillo and other companies progressing the projects that Riverside has the royalties on. Strategic partnerships, very important, and we have joint ventures working in Mexico and other places, and that's really good. And of course, we have that nice cash position of $7 million with no warrants. It's not generated from financing. That's generated from projects we've generated, been able to sell, from equity that we've been able to acquire through the selling of our projects as we've spun out new companies, helping to make companies like Silver Viper, helping to make companies like Arizona Metals, helping to make other companies out of Riverside. So as we reach to really important for us is environmental, social governance, ESG. And as for us, it's always been business as usual, working with the communities where we are, of course, always embracing, and every place we work, generally have almost everyone as a local person working in that region. We do a lot of social projects, and we do a lot of education, and particularly we work a lot on the water and making sure that we don't leave anything contaminated-wise. So if we look finally, the 4-pronged approach, a strategic corporate approach, high grades, easy to mine, good location like Ontario is a wonderful backbone for Riverside, and that's going great. And we have that portfolio. These different portfolios in the past, we've been able to bundle up and spin out. We've been bundle up and make a new transaction. So in the next year, we definitely see that as quite a possibility. And so we're very excited to be here at this conference to be able to begin to unlock the value out of Riverside. The portfolio of royalties as well is another aspect that can be spun out, can be diversified. So Riverside is in an enviable position where we have the capital and we own these different things over the last 16 years, focusing to be ready for today, to a place when the markets are down and Riverside finds ourselves in a very strong position with these different types of assets that we own. The work on critical metals is progressed, and we'll have additional news. And finally, on Mexico, and the thing about Mexico we really like is working with the JV partners. So working in these large, prolific gold belts, working in regions that has success. Our leadership team has done this in the past, have been able to spin out new companies, been able to get those companies to do very well. And so we see with our corporate structure, see with our corporation in a good position, it's really great to be here to really have a chance to embrace and be present to this conference. And thank you very much.
Jean-Marc, thank you very much. You have just 1 minute. Any questions?
Please.
Since you are no stranger to spinning out companies and royalties are doing extremely well, is that something you've considered, is spinning out a new royalty company? Thank you.
So yes, no, we're not thinking of spinning out another royalty company, but we're definitely finding ways to spin out our royalties or do a transaction. I think fundamentally Riverside itself kind of becomes the royalty company. So rather than spinning out royalties, Riverside has constantly spun out things and always kept a royalty. So in all of our different transactions of the last 7 companies, we've always kept a 2% NSR, uncapped on all the projects that we've spun out. So now on that Ontario portfolio, we definitely see that would be an interesting thing, and that would give us another set of royalties. So we have quite a few royalties in Riverside's portfolio. So no, we don't actually think of spinning out a royalty company. We actually think Riverside has been always working since I founded the company in 2007 to generate and own royalties. And so it's been consistent with our business plan. I had a 20-year business plan, and we're at year 16. I didn't think we'd be at this small market cap. So there's been some bumps along the road, but we've been able to get the royalties, and that's worked out well. Thanks for the question. Right on.
Yeah. Thank you, Jean-Marc, and stick at it. And that brings us to a close of